Well, folks, I'd like to welcome everybody to the first session in our EDI professional series. We're going to focus today for session one on processing ACH payments with EDI and CSD. Next slide.
Sorry.
Okay. So a little bit about NSA. We've been around the market for quite a while. We are the first reseller in the space, founded in 1984. Our client's focus is entirely on distributors and everything that supports the distribution market. We've got over 22 years of distribution experience with over 15 consultants with multiple years of experience. Next. So for today's webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to cover these following topics: understanding how to set up the system for ACH payments and processing, understanding how to set up vendors to set ACH payments, understanding how to set up bank records for ACH payment processing, reviewing check printing process for ACH electronic transactions, reviewing ACH payments in general ledger journals, understanding how to troubleshoot ACH payment processing, and finally, understanding relationships with ion connection points and data flows. My name is Brian Weaver. I'm a VP of Sales at NSA, and I'm your host of today's session. And what I'd like to do at this point is introduce Dave Rumsch. So Dave has a lot of experience in this space. He's worked with NSA since 2013 as a senior business consultant. He has 37 years of experience in wholesale distribution, including 33 years working with Infor's SX Enterprise and Cloud Suite. He's worked with Infor Global Solutions and predecessors for 16 years. And in his role as senior business consultant, he's done integrations and special project management with a variety of different customers in the US, Canada, and Australia. He's a retired CPA in the states of Florida and Georgia. And again, he's worked with SX Enterprise and Character, Graphical, Web UI, and Cloud Suite. So with that, Dave, I'll ask you to go ahead and take it away.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to run this session. I'm going to dive right in. In processing ACH transactions, there's a couple of administrative options that need to be set up or checked. Under the vendor tab, under print formats, we need to check the allow AP credit ACH. That allows you to set vendors to go to ION, which is necessary to create the remittance advice or ACH transaction. Additionally, in the payments section, you can set the EDI format to 5. We'll get an ACH transaction generated for the bank that you're running it on. However, you can also set it to a 1, or if you're using 4, that will work as well. And in that case, the system will use check numbers instead of ACH numbers. And I'll show you where that makes a difference at the bank level in just a second. Additionally, under integrations, we want to make sure that on the ION interface that we've turned on the interface to the ION inbox outbox. That's it for administrative options. We also need to set up what's called a noun in the CSD system. Nouns are required for every outbound document that goes through the software generating BODs, which are called business object documents. You'll notice that the remittance advice is checked here I'll delete it and show you how to set it up real quick. So I do a new one. I do a lookup here, come down to remittance advice, select it, and publish the outbound sync BOD and save. This will pop up, and I'm just going to save it as it is. Now it appears on this section and is available to be used. Over here on the right are additional data that you can send in the document that goes out. I'm not going to review those today, but it is possible to send additional data. Next, we're going to take a look at the vendor records. Now I've set up 3 vendors in this system for this training. Those are, this one is affiliated distributors. Sometimes many of our customers will have vendors who they pay through affiliated distributors. So we set that up as a vendor so that it can process those transactions. On the e-commerce tab, we're going to give it a partner number. We're going to set up any banking information that's necessary for AD that they require. That's their banking information, as well as a type. The type field was normally is the type of bank account that the vendor wants you to send the payments to. So 22 means it's a checking account. 32 means it's a savings account. Because of COVID, the vendors decided that they needed to put more money in their cash accounts versus their checking accounts. So that's where usage of this all of a sudden has become critical to each vendor. It will get rejected if it doesn't use the right vendor code. Additionally, here you're going to put in where does that email go for the check stub. That's new in CSD and works really well. I'll show you that as we go. The next 2 that I've set up are just a regular EDI vendor. On the e-commerce tab, we need to set payments to EDI Ion. That's also in affiliated distributors, by the way. The trading partner and the banking information, as well as the email address. And then the third one I've set up is a vendor that sends their checks to AD. So on the general screen right here, they send their checks to AD. Notice a couple of other things on these screens. Some people will use invoice types of ACH. Some will use vendor types of ACH. Some people pay by bank. And that's how you run your cash requirements report. And those fields will govern how you run that report. On the e-commerce tab as well, set to Ion, the trading partner, and the banking information and the email address. So those are the setups in the vendor setup process. Let's take a look at the bank setup. Here I'm going to use Bank 40 for my processing because I live in the South. And in the bank record, the things that are necessary is the bank account so that you've got the bank's, your checking account with the bank. The check number is used, again, if you set the format for the check print in the administrative options to a 1 or a 4, it will use this as the last number used when you increment it in the pay invoices due functionality. I'm sorry, the check print functionality. Additionally, if you use number 5 in the AO options for the type of format, then it will use the last credit ACH number to find what the next number should be there. And I've set that to 100,000 so that it's obvious when I'm not using a check that it's using ACH. Okay, so let's get into the check run process. Very standard. Use the cash requirements report. I'm going to create a new stored one. I'm not going to use the methods that we talked about a moment ago. In other words, I'm not using everybody who's in Bank 40. Some customers will do that. I'm not using the vendor type range or the invoice pay type range. Different customers will use different methods on how they isolate the transactions for ACH payments. I'm going to use the list method, which is very unlikely that a customer would use that unless they're doing a onesie or twosie. They need to do something immediately. So the list I'm going to use, I'm going to do the EDI vendor. In here, the ones that you check to include will be paid. The ones you don't check will not. I then go back and notice that it appears here, the balance is the entire balance, not the balance that I've selected. So don't expect that to be the balance you're paying to that vendor. The next one I'm going to do is to pay the AD vendor, the vendor that pays to AD. And there we've created a couple of invoices and credits as well. and that one appears. Once that's done, you click Save. And then however you run these normally is what you would do. I believe that this needs to be an F or a D, so I'm going to change that. And I give it a job number so that I can use that to do the pay invoices due functionality. I save that, and I'll refresh it until I see a date appear there. If I've done everything right, it will. And I guess what I did wrong. I'm sure you can. When I do a stored job, the system defaults in this environment, our demo environment, to noon. Well, it's not noon yet, so it didn't run. So I always change that to AM, if I remember properly. And now when I refresh it and it finishes, I'll see a date right there. There it is. That tells me it's done. And I can go to the edit function for accounts payable. And I put in my ACH TRN, select it, and search. And there's my invoices that I selected to be paid. Now, when I save from here, the system will run the accounts payable pay invoice due report, APEP. Instead of having to do that manually yourself, you could do it from here. You may be doing that already, and it's common. And refresh. There we go. And they're gone. Here's my pay invoices due report. I'm going to get my journal number from there. And down here at the bottom, I have my journal number. Copy that. Now notice that I also use GLIJ. That's more common for me as a trainer. However, most of my customers will use the AP pay invoice due report to get the journal number. I also do it like this. I can put my initials in here. And I'll see my last item is here. Now, the reason I'm doing this is so that I can see that the vendor has been paid transactions, the various vendors. I change that to both because they're inactive now. The invoice is paid. And now I can see all the transactions that I did. It created two checks. I'm sorry, two transactions to have check numbers assigned to them. And the reason I do it is I can see that the check number 0 is here. Once I print the checks, I come back to make sure that there's a check number there and that it worked properly. So now I'm going to run the check print. Again, this is used for reprints mostly. I suppose you could use a vendor range if you did that. Here's my journal. I'm going to use Bank 40. Down here, I changed this to do a separate, even though the remittance advice, remember, is going to go to the email address that I set up on the vendor on the e-commerce tab. Just to be careful so I don't end up sending it anywhere else or it doesn't bother the program running, I send it to a file and give it a file name of 1. That probably will not do anything at all because, again, the print of the check stub, the remittance device, is going to email. Remember to change option 11 to yes. Everything else should be your defaults. I am getting the bank record to get the next check number, in this case, the next ACH number. And again, I do my impatient refresh. And I go right back to my journal inquiry and filter. And now I can see the 2 ACH numbers. Notice over here, it's changed it from check number to ACH number. Those are the 2 ACH documents. You can also run, by the way, the journal print. I generally don't. Sorry, give me 1 second. In many of our customers, we will then take the remittance advice that I'll show you now. Let's go take a look at it. First, I want to go here. I use the inbox outbox. Remember that I turned that on in the administrative options. I use that to make sure that it went. So it opens up and defaults to outbound. I come in and select remittance advice. I say 0 days. That means today. And you can see that there were 2 transactions processed. Company number, ACH remittance advice number, bank number is included in the bot ID automatically. Notice that there are no errors listed here. If I had an error, it would show up there. If I drill down here, I can see the XML document that went out to ION and is going to be processed by converting it to the bank's format, the payee format, the bank's format. And this is that document. You can select it like that and copy it and paste it if you want to have it. You can also get it from ION itself. So I will generally copy that. I'll open up Notepad++. This is when you're doing research, right? And I'll do a new document and paste it in there. And once I save it with XML at the end, and save, you'll see that it makes it really colorful and much easier to read. So if you're troubleshooting, you're going to save the document and do your troubleshooting. Let's come back here, come out of the inbox outbox. Again, if there was an error, you would see a message right there, like invalid vendor, the document isn't correct somehow. Not very common. If you've got it set up right, it's going to process properly here. Let's take a quick look in ION and see what goes on there. I know that you will not be handling this. However, this is more for the IT folks to close the loop. There we go. Normally, you would have a connection point set up. And the connection point would be the bank, right? And in the bank, you set it up and you give it the bank's host name. That's usually a .com or .net address, the port that the bank tells you, the username they want you to use, and the password to get the data into their system. Then you do a test once you set it up to make sure it works, and it does. You'll also set up the documents that are going to be sent. In this case, it's going to be a special document because we'll take the remittance advice, the one that's here, and we'll convert it into the bank's format. So it'll be in any document here. I'm not going to go into those details at this time. You'll get some of that training in the IT folks on how to set up connection points and data flows. Now the data flow for this one, it's going to pick up the file. I'm sorry, from CSD. It's going to use this part, pick up the file from there. It's going to pick up the remittance advice. It's going to run it through its process to convert it, and then it'll end up delivering it to the bank here. That's just a brief view of that. On one view, you would come in, and right here, I know that I ran this in the last hour. I know it's a sync remittance advice. And if I search, I'll see my 2 checks. And if I drill down into it, notice that there would be red marks if it didn't go and no red marks if it did. In this case, it's looking for a filter that's used for some other purpose, and I'm not using that one, so it won't go. This is the one I do use. So here's the file that went. In fact, let's look there first. There we go. Sorry. Here's the file name. If you're going to download it and save it, you'll want to take that name and name it that when you do. This will tell you all the events that happened in Ion. And if there's an error, you'll come down to the bottom and you'll see the error and you can tell what happened. Again, this is IT. If you go to the Ion inbox outbox and you find an error there, then you would ask IT to come here and figure out what's wrong. Hopefully they've got the message to do that. So again, I'm on this one right here. And if I need to see it, I can do show more. And that's that same document we saw before. And I can download it and rename it. Now that's a very quick session. I am okay at this time. Let's see if there's any questions from our team.
Yeah, hi, Dave. So we do have some in the chat. Um, so is there a doc that outlines setup requirements?
Yes, I prepared on NSA has a document called setups and processing, and it indicates all of the processing setup and processing steps that I ran through today. When I go live with the customer, I always will do a list of the procedure and setups and processing document for them specifically so that when they go live, they've got all of the steps.
Okay, great. Another question, does the type of payment set up in AO determine how the vendor should be set up?
No, this is the setting it to a 5 or a 1. Um, so if you set it to a 1, the only difference is that the system will create checks for from the bank and not ACH transactions. As a matter of fact, let me take a second and show you how you would void one of these, because voiding ACHs is a peculiar method. So here I'm going to do a new one time on my check print. Go back, check numbers. Let's say I wanted to void that one check. And in order to do this, I've got to convert that from an ACH transaction to a check transaction. And reprinting the ACH document, same journal. Is that journal number? Say yes to reprint. Say to get the new number from the bank. And no to EDI. And what that will do is void the ACH transaction and create a check. And then you can go to check reconciliation and you can void it there. That will recreate the accounts payable and the general ledger transactions. If I go back to that journal now and I look here, it should have done one as a check. Just a moment. Make sure it did it. Supposed to take that. I apologize. I said no. It should have taken this and done it that way. I'm going to do that one more time. I may have put the wrong check number in as well. That's probably what it was. Yeah, I think I had too many zeros in there. And I could put the beginning check number as number 5 in there as well. But if it's going to use it, I'm going to say no. I'm going to tell it number 5. There it goes. See, so it's now taken that transaction and moved it from the ACH. It voided that ACH transaction, created check number 5. Now to void check number 5, I go to CREC, quick entry, in my bank, change this to void, update, check number 5. Yes, recreate, because that's the issue. Now, again, the reason we're doing this is because every now and then, one of our customers will run a check to ACH that what they didn't think they wanted, and they got to void it. They call the bank, tell them to stop payment, don't do it, and then they void the transaction in this manner. And there it is voided. I hope that answered the question about the administrative option. You'll notice nothing in the vendor affected that. The only thing that affected it is how I run the APEC report. Other
Oh, great.
questions?
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a few more, Dave. So does this excuse me, does this XML show the remit email address?
Surely does. So if I come down here, where'd it go? Remittance. There it is right here. And I should be getting an email. I should have showed you that. My apology.
No worries. Just a couple more. So do we have a doc for all the potential errors and how to resolve them?
Generally not, because there are so very few errors. They're not in the standard process. So normally they'll call in with an error and then we'll do it through support. The basic method is, as I showed, go into OS, find the invoice, get the document, review it, and you should be able to find the errors in there so that you can reprocess that particular document.
Okay.
And
If
here's
we
what the invoice looks like coming through as an email. Here's my email. And there's my check stub. Okay.
okay. So if we void, how does it get recalled from the bank?
You need to call the bank and tell them not to process the transaction.
Okay. And is there a sample you can show of the remit email?
I just did.
Oh, that's right, you just did.
Yep, that's good. No problem.
Great. And then this is a good question too. Just to verify, everything that we're showing today is all standard in CSD, no additional software needed.
That is correct. However, bear in mind that once I get that remittance advice out into ION, it's in this format. So the cost to you to the customer for this process is to map this document to the Notcha file or the bank's requirement. Notcha is the standard file format in the country, or they may have a separate requirement. Each bank has a slightly different version of that Notcha file. Everybody does it a little different. So we're going to contact your bank up front, or you will, sorry, and then they'll send us the mapping, what it looks like that they need, and then you would contract with us or with a value add network partner such as Unilink, to create the Notcha file that we eventually send to the bank.
Okay, great. That's all the questions we have so far, Dave.
Okay, I guess I'm done. It was quite quick, so 30 minutes. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope this was useful. Bear in mind, let's go back here. Next steps for you, for customers, is to reach out to NSA, account manager, or sales rep, and plan your next EDI ACH project. If you want to, you can send scheduling requests to Susan Bell at nsa.com, nsacom.com, and she will schedule one of our consultants to work with you.
Yes, and just mention that we will be having additional EDI series throughout the rest of the year as well. This is a list of approximately when they will be happening and what the topics are. We will make sure that all of the recordings that we have, including the one today, will be on the NSA website, so you'll be able to find them easily by the title for the specific elements of the EDI requirements that you might be looking for. Uh, Dave, just a couple quick final questions here. How long does it usually take to get set up and working with the bank from beginning
The
to end?
process, because of the code, our process will be that the bank will send us their file format. We'll send you a quote, customer, to convert that file to the bank format. You would then approve as SOW and then a quote. We would then do the work. Now that may take, because we don't want to commit our development folks to immediate action. I like to give them at least 6 weeks, is what I tell my customers, before we'll pick it up for coding. You might get that sooner. Once that's complete, you're going to have about a 2 to 3 week testing process with the bank. So my guess is maximum about 3 months start to finish.
Terrific. I think that's all the questions we have for today. Dave, I'd like to thank you again for putting this together and for the future EDI webinars that we'll be holding. And thanks to everybody that attended live today. And again, the recorded session will be posted to the NSA website. Thank you guys and enjoy the rest of your day. That's a wrap.